Hello and welcome to the first installment of Scouching's 2020 NHL Draft recaps. Today we're going to be looking at, funnily enough, the same team we looked at first last year, the Anaheim Ducks. And before you ask, the order in which the teams will be released has been done randomly. So I'm sorry if you might have to wait a little while for your team's video, but rest assured it is on the way. So let's dive right into what the Anaheim Ducks got out of the 2020 draft. And right off the start, I thought they made a great pick in the first round at 6th overall, picking Jamie Drysdale of the Erie Otters. Jamie Drysdale might not have been the guy that I would have picked at 6th overall, but if you're looking for a defenseman, especially with Jake Sanderson already off the board, Jamie Drysdale was no question the best option available. He's a dynamic offensive player with great four-way skating mobility, with an ability to send pucks out of his defensive zone at a high rate of efficiency and push play positively in the offensive direction. He might need some work on the defensive side of the game and definitely will need to be a bit stronger on his feet to be more competent defensively, but overall I think Drysdale could be a very good power play quarterback with potential top pair offensive defenseman upside one day. It might take him a little while to get there, but sometimes that's the case with defensemen, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And arguably at 27th overall, the Anaheim Ducks added what I think could be one of the steals of the first round, adding Jacob Perreault at 27th overall. Jacob Perreault is not a player without fault, but what he is very good at, he is very good at. To me, Perreault is a dual threat offensive dynamo with some defensive shortcomings, but in my work, the offensive potential there far outweighs his defensive liabilities. He's got an absolute rocket of a shot. He has some real flashes of great skating and great skill, especially when he's crossing over to generate speed in the middle of the ice. And I think he's a guy who can not only score from anywhere, but also when he applies himself physically, can make a play from anything. When he's willing to, he goes hard into the corners and battles for loose pucks and sends those pucks out into the front of the net more often than not. So I think if they can get a good complementary scoring winger out of Perreault down the road, this is a great pick at 27, especially when you look at some of the names that went off the board before him. At 36th overall, the Anaheim Ducks to me made a little bit of a reach, but a perfectly reasonable pick in Sam Colangelo. This is the kind of player that I think the Ducks have really liked in the last little while. A strong, skilled power winger who can just push play at both ends of the ice reasonably well. Colangelo's a guy whose skating and speed might not necessarily be where you want it to be, but I think he's got some interesting skill and he can drive to the net really, really hard and make a play around the net really impressively more often than you might think. Now, Colangelo might not have a ton of upside here, but I do think he's a good pick who could become a solid bottom six NHL winger, especially when you look at his potential as a physical power forward. At 67th overall, they added Ian Moore, who I kind of went out of my way to watch as much as I could this year because of his production at the high school prep level. And I did see the one game he played with the USNTDP team, and I didn't really come away extremely impressed with his game, especially on the defensive side of the puck. But with the puck, he shows good puck skill, he can navigate up the ice well, he pushes into the offensive zone to generate offense really well. And at 67th overall, if there were people who had seen a lot more of him in prep school on that circuit and really wanted to pick him, I don't see how you can really complain. There's good skill with him, he's a decently mobile player, especially when you look at his size, and he's going to a really strong Harvard University program that really likes to develop defensemen like him. So if his defensive side of the game and the reads that he makes as a defenseman can improve while he's at college, I think this could be a really interesting pick for the Ducks, even though it might not be the guy that I would have pushed for in that slot. At 104th, the Ducks then took another defenseman in Teemo Nickel, an Austrian playing in the QMJHL. Now, whenever I watched Teemo Nickel play, I always came away a little bit more impressed with Jacob Dion, his partner. But Dion is a smaller player who doesn't really have a tremendous amount of mobility, but he does have a lot of skill. And I think that spooked a lot of scouts that resulted in him going undrafted, so I would keep an eye on him for next year. Whereas with Teemo Nickel, he's a player that I saw both in person and online quite a bit, and I just didn't really see a whole lot that impressed me. I found that his puck decisions were a little bit questionable, he wasn't the most mobile defender, but when he was playing well, I did see that he could open up the ice with his skill pretty well and find players in the neutral zone and push play offensively. So I didn't have Nickel ranked, and I never really came away thinking that this was a player that I would be pushing for, but in this range of the draft, you can't really complain, so I guess we'll have to see what the Ducks think they can get out of him. In the 5th round, the Ducks took a chance on a 3 times undrafted center playing in the KHL and producing quite well in Artem Galimov. This is a player whose production really caught my attention, and I went and watched him quite a few times, and to be frank, I don't really think his game projects to smaller ice very well. He He's not the most mobile player. He does have some good skill and can find the back of the net either through his scoring or passing. But again, this is a player who's further along in his development. Maybe another season or two in the KHL where he continues to improve causes him to be brought over and transplanted directly onto the roster. And if the Ducks used a pick on a player like Galimov and even just get a serviceable NHL player out of him in this range, that's a good pick. In the 6th round, the Ducks continued to draft players previously undrafted and went for Albin Sundqvist out of Sweden. In some of the results-based data that I have in my prospect tracker, Albin Sundqvist at the under 20 level actually shows spectacularly well. This was a player that I watched quite a few times, really seeing how he generated those results. And in my viewings, I saw Sundqvist as not really the most finesse-based player in the offensive zone. I don't really see a tremendous amount of skill there, but he's a smart, powerful player who knows how to get to the net. He knows how to get his stick on the puck in high danger areas and just tap those easy pucks into the net. And for an NHL roster, you need guys who are capable of doing that, even if they're not the fastest guys on the team. He played much of last season on the SHL roster for Skellefteå, which is always notable. He made international appearances for Sweden. I low-key really like the potential with a player like Sundqvist. If he has another really good year playing full-time in the SHL, he might become a serviceable bottom line or third line center for the Ducks who can drive really good results, but I still think that might be a little bit of a ways away when you look at his shortcomings with his skating and overall skill level and offensive ability. But based on the results he generated and based on the resume that he has, I thought this was a perfectly reasonable pick in the 6th round for the Ducks. And then in the 7th round, the Ducks took actually the first player that I tracked a game of this season in Ethan Bowen from the Chilliwack Chiefs. Now I came away from that one game that I tracked thinking that Ethan Bowen was fine for the BCHL level. He produced okay, he knew how to get to dangerous areas, there's some decent skill there, and he was pretty good in the face-off circle. But in the 7th round, you're mostly taking guys you're just taking flyers on, so I don't really have an issue with this pick. I just don't really see a tremendous amount of Ethan Bowen that really screamed too good for the junior A level. He might need some time to develop, he will definitely need a couple of years in college, but he does show some interesting flashes of skill and two-way ability that might be able to turn into something down the road. So we try to encapsulate a team's draft crop with the same rating system we use in the Scouching Report videos, but we'll give things a little bit of a twist. The number's going to indicate the peak talent that the team really drafted, especially relative to the slots that they had, and the letter will indicate the consistency of that talent within the draft crop. So for the Anaheim Ducks, I'm going to be giving them a 1C. I think overall they could have some really interesting players come out of the draft, even when you look outside of the 1st round. I think Sam Colangelo could be a serviceable energy line player. Albin Sundqvist just goes out and drives defense first results in Sweden right now. Artem Galimov is already in the KHL and producing somehow. And even if I don't see him projecting to North America, that doesn't mean that he won't. It'll be very interesting to see how he projects down the road. But to me, the treasures for the Ducks are going to be Jamie Drysdale and Jacob Perreault at the top end. Jamie Drysdale could become a great top pair defenseman on a team that knows how to develop defensemen, and Jacob Perreault could be an electrifying offensive force for the Anaheim Ducks for years, especially on the wing where he's primarily relied upon for generating offense. So that's all for the Anaheim Ducks recap. I hope you enjoyed. If you liked it, you can click all the buttons you see below me so you never miss another one. If you really liked it, you could subscribe on Patreon or here on YouTube by clicking join below. You'll get access to a Discord server, data sheets for hundreds of drafted and undrafted prospects, as well as plenty of other goodies. Or you can pick up some merchandise at the Scouchwear shop, where 50% of all profits go to the Women's Sports Foundation. So that's all, and we'll see you in the next one where we profile the Nashville Predators.